I do want to talk draft for a second.
What up, man?
And I want to bring on one of my favorites whenever it comes to the draft, Nick Baumgardner. And let's start. I want to start at number one, Nick. I want to start the number one pick. If you're the Titans, what do you do?
Man, it's a tough one. I've gone back and forth on the quarterback thing for them. I mean, I feel like they just did this with Will Levis, albeit in the second round, a guy that's kind of like, we'll see. Not so sure that he's a slam dunk. I think Cam Ward's a better prospect there, but it's also kind of like, they're not a good team. They're not in a good situation. Brand new GM. You're starting from scratch a little bit. I'm not sure that I go Cam Ward there if I can't trade out of it. But the one trick I would lean towards Abdul Carter, but the one trick there is with his foot. I'd have to get that cleared completely. But my gut there says Abdul Carter at 1 for Tennessee, but it wouldn't shock me if they go quarterback.
So they're not a quarterback away, and I live in Nashville, and I'm there, and I watch them lose for the most part, and the colors are slow. Everything about them right now is not. We have no hope. And if you listen to how people describe Cam Ward, they say if he were to be drafted last year, same exact guy, he wouldn't be above Caleb, wouldn't be above Jaden, and you get down to like those, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix type guys. If he's not a transcendent quarterback that you could probably put your next 10 years on, and you are more than a quarterback away, why would you not try to get as many picks as you can from that and build toward the future? Because you're not going to be good next year either, which probably means you'll have another decent pick.
Yeah, the tricky part there is finding somebody to trade with, right? Because, I mean, there's not that many teams right now that I think are knocking doors down to pick a quarterback in this draft. Joe Shane just talked today at owners' meetings, and really, I mean, he doesn't like to give his hand away, but it really made it sound like they don't like the idea of a quarterback at 3. We know they just, everybody's just, made the mad dash to sign people. I just don't think this is a super strong group at the top. I mean, I don't dislike Cam Ward. I don't dislike Shedeur Sanders, but I think Cam is probably the one guy that I would feel okay about in the top 10. And you mentioned last year, like, I think he would have been in that range with like Penix, Nix, McCarthy, somewhere in that mix. But like you said, not above any of the dudes at the top right there. So it's a gamble no matter what you do. And if you're not a quarterback away, it's really hard to justify it right now. So it's going to be hard for Tennessee to make that trade, I think, too, depending on everything going on, unless somebody says, hey, we want to get Travis Hunter, we want to get Carter, whatever it may be, that could happen as well. But, we'll see how it goes.
Seeing a lot of mocks, it looks like Shedeur is falling, but not really for any reason. Where do you see him going if today the draft happened?
That's a good point. I don't know if he's falling necessarily, or if he's if water is leveling. I think people got a little excited, as they often do with quarterbacks, especially after last year when we saw that many guys go in the top 12. But I've thought all along Shedeur is a fringe first-round pick in this draft. It would not shock me if a team trades up into the bottom of the first to try to grab him. It wouldn't shock me if Pittsburgh, who just made a signing with Fields there, if Pittsburgh does it and says, hey, take a year, we'll see what happens and grow into it. The Jets could trade back up to the bottom of the first. The Giants could do the same thing if they wanted to. I just don't see him going in the top 10. I certainly don't see him going in the top 5. To me, he's a back half of the first round, top of the second round player.
Nick Baumgardner on with us, talking NFL draft. This is the draft of running backs. I saw like a list of 40 where they were like, all these guys are good. Where does the first running back go? Is it Ashton Jeanty? Where do you think Jeanty goes, and how many get drafted in the first couple of rounds?
Oh, man, great question. I think Jeanty's definitely a top 10 pick in this draft. I think it's going to be really hard. A lot of people have pegged him to Dallas there as the fun one at 12. I think Dallas is going to have to trade up if they want him. I don't know if he's going to get past the Raiders. They're at 6. To me, he's up there with Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. He's in that class of running back who in the last 10 years, we would say those two, Saquon, very few guys. And I think he's in that group where you can take him, put him on the field for all 3 downs. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He was a receiver in high school. He's played quarterback before, for crying out loud. Just an all-around outstanding football player who I think is definitely worth it, especially in this class. And then the best question of all is how many are going to go in like the top 2 or 3 rounds. I think Omarion Hampton from Carolina probably sneaks into the first round. Caleb Johnson, the kid from Iowa, is another one there to look at. Judkins and TreVeyon Henderson, I think, are day 2 guys. Judkins could even slip up into the first round. We'll see about that. So I think you're looking at like 5 or 6 at least that are going to go in the top and by the end of day 2, or at least have a shot at it. Because this is a very deep group all the way down. There's some people that love Cam Skattebo, the kid from Arizona State. He's been getting some buzz lately too. So a lot of guys there that are battle tested and can fill a role really well. And as we know, everybody in the NFL wants to run the ball again, so it's back in vogue.
You mentioned Scadaboo. I read that he secretly, privately ran a 4.6 40. How secret and private do you have to run your 40, and why are you running it so secret and private?
It's like the ultimate question of this year's draft. There's been so many guys who skipped it, and it's like there's a Carson Schwessinger, the UCLA linebacker, is going to run in private in a couple of weeks. And I'm like, everyone's going to know this by the end of the day. I don't know. I think it's a lot of pressure that they put on themselves. Guys want to run it in a comfortable setting. A lot of guys are relying on the GPS data, even though there's a lot of teams out there that are kind of, I don't know if I love the GPS data. So it's kind of become a cat and mouse thing there a little bit with I'm not going to work out. I'm not going to test. I'm not going to, measure myself in some cases too. So teams are going to really have to rely on film as much as they ever have, which is always a good thing, but they're really, really going to have to do it this year.
Since the start of talking about this draft, there have been 3 players that have been, hey, this could be a possible number 1 pick, and that would be Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and Travis Hunter. We're not hearing that about Hunter anymore. He's not a quarterback, obviously, and whomever drafts 1 is going to take a quarterback, we think. Travis Hunter, where is he now on the board?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of it depends on what happens with Cleveland at 2. If Cleveland goes quarterback, let's say Abdul Carter goes 1. Let's say Cleveland takes Cam Ward, and then it becomes a question of, if you're the Giants, is that an interest for you over somebody like Mason Graham? Could be. We'll see. And then if you're New England, I think at 4, you're hoping and sort of praying that he falls to you because, regardless of where he goes in this draft, he's still the best prospect in the class. It's just a matter of the positions that he plays are not 2 spots that, but we're talking about 2 spots. They're not 2 spots that teams typically take number 1 overall. But a team like New England, I would think, could get all kinds of use out of him on either side of the ball, quite frankly. So I think somebody could get a steal here with Travis Hunter. And we say a steal usually in the 10 or 12, but top 5 steal for this guy because he's probably the best player in the draft, no question. It's just a matter of positional value and what you need at this point.
I think measuring body parts is funny, especially when it becomes a story. And it happened with Kenny Pickett, and Kenny Pickett's got little hands. So, and then it didn't work out for him in Pittsburgh, and then you wonder maybe it was his little hands. I don't know, but now we're seeing this with Will Campbell, and he's got little arms. So, little arm gate. How do you feel about this? How real is it?
Short arm gate. It's definitely real, but I think in this case, this is where you really got to watch the tape with a guy like this. His hands and his feet are outstanding, and to me, when we talk about tackles and edge rushers with their short arms, another guy on the other side of the ball who had short arms was Aiden Hutchinson, kid for the Lions, who's been phenomenal because he knows what he's doing with his hands and his feet, and his effort never stops. And I think with Will Campbell, when you watch him on tape, he's as good and as dedicated a technician as there is in this class. He works as hard or harder than any offensive lineman, in the group. And I think, yes, there is a question. The Rashawn Slater, the kid from the Chargers, a couple of years ago had the same conversation. He's been a good player when healthy. It's more about your hands and your feet and if you know what to do with them. If you're a sloppy or raw prospect, which he is not, then yes, the arm length would become a question. Like if you are Armand Membo, the kid from Mizzou, who's a little more raw than Campbell, who doesn't have a length problem, but if he did, that would concern me more. In Campbell's case, it really doesn't because I think he knows what he's doing with his hands. I think he can play tackle in the NFL. And if somebody says he can't, I know he'll be an outstanding guard. And that's kind of the whole thing with him is he's just going to be a really good football player one way or the other, I think. And it'd be wise not to overthink that one. No short arm gate with Will Campbell.
I wish we heard about guys who had really long body parts, like extra long legs and extra long arms.
Yeah, legs would be
like
cool.
That became a story, like his legs are 7 inches longer than they should be. Because this Will Campbell thing, he's a monster. And it's got to be weird for a guy that's been so big his whole life and has been so dominating to now what we think of him right this second is he's got a little tiny, I think of like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. That's not proper because he's a but that's what I think of now.
I'm totally with you, Nick, Chris here. Who was the first person to decide that a tackle has to have 34-inch arms? When did this become the baseline number?
I feel like if you go all the way back to that Bill Walsh wrote that book that's out of print right now, the Finding the Winning Edge. If you go online and look for this thing, it's the real copy's $120 because it's not around. He's got all the little lengths and desirables, and I feel like we've just devolved since then, and we go by the average. And 33 is sort of the standard of it's got to be at least 33. Well, what if it's 32 3/4? And I think at the end of the day, all of it really comes back to what are they doing on tape? How consistent are they with their hands and feet? And really, for me, offensive line wise, that's kind of the whole thing. The length, if you know what to do with it, is kind of an added bonus, is the way I look at it.
What quarterback do you feel like has moved himself into the first round that maybe we didn't think? It could be a Jackson Dart. It could be the kid from Louisville. Like, who is it for you that you think probably will show up now in the first round?
It's a tough question there, but those two you mentioned, and I'm still not ruling out Jalen Milroe from Alabama there. He is easily the best athlete of this group. And even including the guys at the top. I mean, Milroe went a 4.3 something, whatever it was, 40. He's got a huge arm. He's explosive. He's 230. Just cut up. I mean, there's a picture from there. He is an outstanding athlete in space with a terrific arm and everything else that you could possibly ever need. It's just a matter of he's not a polished, pocket passer. He really needs some time. And I do feel like if a team has the ability to say, hey, we've got a veteran bridge in here that we're not going to have forever, Steelers, one of these other teams, and say, we want to get a guy that we can sit and develop on, because I do think that's going to have to become – NFL's not a developmental league, but the NFL is going to have to learn with some of these quarterbacks now and into the future with the transfer portal and everything else. You're not getting as much polish, so you're going to have to take guys sometimes that you have to sit and develop. And I think Milroe would be a guy based on the entire athletic profile that could surprise a lot of people and jump in there maybe at the bottom of the first, or at least still be QB3, that comes off the board after Shedeur. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And I almost feel like that's what we're going to see over a guy like Jackson Dart. And I love Tyler Shuck as well. And I hope people don't, discount him. I think he's a terrific, sneaky athlete for him. But Milroe is really the guy there that's got all the physical tools that the right quarterback coach and the right system, I think, that can make that work.
Nick Baumgardner on with us talking NFL draft. If I give you over-under on positions being taken in the first round, tell me over-under. Let's go quarterbacks, 3.5.
Under. I'll go 2 on that one, actually, right now.
Only 2 quarterbacks in the first round. Oh. And so that's only Cam and Shedeur.
Yeah, I like Cam and Shedeur in the first round, and we'll see if somebody goes up at the bottom. But it's a logjam down there. It's going to have to be about preference. So either way, I would go under 3.5, 3 or 2.
Wide receivers, 3.5.
Oh, wide receivers, 3.5. Depends on what we call Mr. Hunter, but I would say over. I think we'll go over on that one.
How do you feel about T-Mac at Arizona? Like his stock, at least just by listening and reading tweets, has gone up and down, up and down. Big believers and big non-believers. Your thoughts on T-Mac?
Yeah, I think he's exactly where he was before the 40. It doesn't matter to me that whatever the time was. He's a big guy with terrific ball skills, nose long, like we just talked about. He's got all the metrics, measurables, whatever you want to call it, and he knows what to do with it. He's got a terrific catch radius. He's great in the air. I think there was also some talk that he wasn't necessarily all the way healthy last season. If you watch his tape from 2 years ago or year before last, whatever you want to call it, he was just, nobody could do anything with this guy. I think he's absolutely a top 10 pick still, or at least a top 10 player in this class, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in the top 10. Really like him a lot.
One more over-under, running backs, 2.5, first round.
Ooh, I think over. No, I'm sorry, under. I'll say under, but barely. Under, but barely. I think 2 are going to go, and maybe a third. We'll see. But the running back class, again, it's one where teams will wait on this, right? Now, I'm not going to take one this year because we know we got a guy coming out next year. So there's a lot of teams in here that need a guy, and there's a few guys who you could talk yourself into here. So it would not shock me if it goes over, but I'll go slightly under on that one.
Final question for you, and I want to have you look into the future, into your crystal ball. Like a crazy draft day trade that you could probably see happening because you're hearing whispers like a Cousins to the Titans or something like that. Yeah. What are you hearing that could possibly happen?
Well, that's one right there. I think that, the guys at the top, what are Houston? I'm sorry, what are Tennessee and what are, you got me on the Oilers train now. What are Tennessee and Cleveland going to do at quarterback? I think that still remains sort of the big question for me. Are they going to try to get a guy like Cousins, or are they going to go in here and make something happen in the draft? I think that's the biggest one left. And I guess we'll see what happens with how Aaron Rodgers impacts everything else too. But for the most part, I feel like the quarterback carousel has sort of, we know where it's at least settled on, and there's only 2 questions at the top that we have left. So I'm not sure if it'll involve necessarily Cousins, if it's something else. But that to me feels like the one last piece sitting out there is, do one of those teams at the top say, okay, we're going to put him in there, kick the can down the road, and then, hope Arch Manning comes out next year, or one of these guys too. I think that's still going to be a factor with those teams at the top, is what next year's class could be in relation to what this year's class is.
Senior writer, NFL draft analyst for The Athletic, Nick Baumgardner. Nick, thank you for your time. Thank you for your analysis. We really appreciate it. Looking forward to the draft. I don't know that there has been this much like what the crap is going to happen in years. And I don't know if that's because nobody maybe they aren't as good generally. If there's only 2 quarterbacks, I just cannot see one of those quarterbacks because quarterbacks are so in need. that somebody taking a flyer late in the first, like moving up late in the first round and getting.
That's what I think. Trade up. I think that could happen. I think that could be your third. Somebody trades up to the bottom of the first, gets a guy.
Nick, good to talk to you, buddy.
Yes, sir. Thanks, guys.
You. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.